Welcome to the Oral History Podcast, which features stories from the oral history website voicesofoklahoma.com, where Oklahomans have given generously of their time to tell their life story for present-day listeners and for the generations to come. Our entire collection is available at voicesofoklahoma.com. By subscribing to our podcast, you will be notified of new Oklahoma oral history podcasts. So now listen to another interesting storyteller from voicesofoklahoma.com.
Tom Clark graduated from Tulsa's Edison High School in 1959 and from the University of Oklahoma in 1963 with a Bachelor of Business Administration degree. After serving as a flight instructor in the Air Force, he joined the family business, Tulsair, in 1968, and in 1986 he became the sole owner and president and chief executive. The company has 3 aircraft sales and maintenance facilities covering a 6-state region. In this interview, you will hear how Gale Clark, Tom's father, came to Tulsa in 1945 and on his first day sold 13 airplanes, which led to the founding of Tulsair and began a long-standing relationship with Walter Beechcraft. Also, listen for Tom's Hollywood connection. Tom Clark's story is made possible by our generous foundations and listeners like you who believe in preserving our state's legacy, one voice at a time, on voicesofoklahoma.com.
My name is John Erling. Today's date is April 5th, 2012. Tom, state your full name, your date of birth, and your present age, please.
Thomas Gale Clark, Jr. I was born 6/6/41, and I'm 70 years old.
Your middle name,
Well, my father was a senior. Everybody called him Gale Clark. Therefore, when I was born, it gave me Thomas. Until I was in the 3rd grade, I was known as Tommy Clark.
And we're recording this interview here in Tulsa in the offices of voicesofoklahoma.com. Where were you born?
In Enid, Oklahoma.
Let's talk about your mother first. Your mother's name, maiden name, where she was born, where she came from.
Well, it's Leota Groh, Groh. That's a German name from her father, who had immigrated over here from Germany. I'd say probably in 1907, 1908. He and his wife.
Came to Oklahoma?
Well, they originally went to Missouri, and he was a Missouri dirt farmer. Why he moved to Enid, Oklahoma, I do not know. But as a young child, I used to go out to a farm. They didn't have a freezer or a refrigerator. They had a box. They poured ice into it, so it truly was an ice box. Milk came from cows. I'd go out and watch them milk the cows. It wasn't homogenized, so I thought it tasted horrible. When they wanted something to eat that night, they'd go out and chop the head off of a chicken, and we'd have chicken. I watched it one time. I thought I was going to pass out. I guess I can't stand the sight of blood. At least I couldn't then, so I never did it again. He had some fields he plowed out there, and he had 2 mules. He'd plow the fields and plant corn or wheat or something. I'm not sure what he was planting. But these are thoughts I remember in 1944, 45, 46, 47. So it was a wonderful experience to be on a true farm and watch him work that during that time period.
And his name again was?
Bob Groh, Groh.
So that's your mother's father.
Right.
Tell us about your mother then. So then she grew up in Enid.
When they moved from Missouri to Enid, they were farmers as young children, but once she grew into a lady, she lived in Enid, and she basically was working in small companies and selling clothes or something. This is just right before World War II. Probably 1935, 36, 37, 38. My father met her in Enid when he was working there.
Your mother's personality, and what was she like?
She was a beautiful, beautiful woman. Very loving, very kind, very gentle. I'll tell you my favorite story is when I eat chili. If you were over at my house and I was having chili, you would send me to put vinegar in it. Now I use Splenda, but I used to put sugar into the chili, and people look at me, "Are you out of your mind? What are you doing?" One of my favorite stories is that my mother was in some restaurant in Enid, Oklahoma. They're in the Depression now. So the owner thought that my mother was putting too much ketchup on her chili, and so he forbid her to use any more ketchup without paying for it. My mother was so upset about it that just to make him mad, she put sugar and vinegar on it, and it really tastes very well. Some of my friends in Oklahoma here have used the recipe I have, and they have won every single time they've used it. So she was kind of feisty, too. She met my father there. He was working for National Sash and Door Windows, was selling windows in Enid, Oklahoma.
So they met there at that company?
No, they just met each other in Enid. To what process, I don't know.
So then your father's name?
Thomas Gale Clark. He was born in Scott City, Kansas, and was raised there to a young man. His grandfather owned the movie theater. My grandfather, Thomas Harry Clark, they, again, farmers. For some reason, they moved from Scott City, Kansas to Wellington, Kansas, which is a town 30 miles south of Wichita. And there he became a barber. And my father, they got there about when they were just starting high school. My father played football for Wellington High School, and I have all the programs from when he played football, and he was all-state and that sort of stuff. And so he got a scholarship when he graduated from Wellington to play football for the University of Colorado. One thing very interesting, the person he roomed with, the Chi Omega, was Wizard White, who became Supreme Court Justice, and he roomed with Wizard White, who became a Supreme Court Justice of the United States of America, and they served in the Chi Omega house, serving them dinner and keeping the house clean. So they did that for 2 years. And then my grandfather, who came down with, well, they had too much iron in their blood. I forget what they call that disease. He got very sick, and so he moved back and finished college at Wichita University. I think he probably got the thought about airplanes because, as you say, Clyde Cessna and Walter Beech were starting to develop airplanes. Beechcraft started in 1932. So here they were just south 30 miles of those towns. Really, aviation would begin, the birth of aviation, you might call it, or manufacturing these airplanes in Wichita, Kansas, which is 30 miles north. I always thought that his love of flying came from being so close, and I'm sure that he probably drove up there and saw the planes and saw them test flying them, and I think that's where his desire for aircraft came from while he was taking care of his father just prior to World War II.
So then how does he get to Oklahoma?
As the war drew closer and my father saw it coming, he didn't really want to fight on the ground, and he saw this aviation was taking place, so he decided that he wanted to fly. So he went and applied as a cadet to the Army Air Corps, which changed in 1941 to the Army Air Force. But he went through that program, and he got his wings. When World War II started, the Army made him a flight instructor in a PT, I don't know if it's a PT-19, might have been a PT-16, 17, 19. He flew those three different airplanes. There was no glass bubble above them. There was an open cockpit. The student sat in the front and the instructor sat in the back. Those are pretty famous airplanes. And he married my mother about 1938. And I was born in 41, 6 months prior to the war starting. He was in flight instructing, and I don't remember any of it because I was so young. But all over Texas and Oklahoma, the military was moving to training schools where he would teach. The military moved him around, and throughout World War II, he was a flight instructor. They let him go, released him in March of 1945 because the war was coming to an end, and they didn't want to retrain him to fight overseas. The war was about done. So he left the Army Air Corps in March and got a job with Beech Aircraft. My mother and father, they moved to Wichita, Kansas, myself and my sister, who's 2 years younger than I am. And he mainly was working on the manufacturing line. He was in charge of a group of men. He would be kind of the boss of that particular group for putting the wings on or the accessory equipment or something and so on. So they were manufacturing aircraft. Then the famous story is Walter Beech, who started Beech Aircraft in 1932, came walking through the production line. My dad was a very handsome man. Beech had heard that he had all this experience flying from World War II, and when he came by, he started talking to him. My dad had this incredible personality. He was so impressed by his personality, he asked me, would you like to sell airplanes? And he said, oh, I'd love to. And then he said, well, what town would you like to go to? And I think two things influenced his dream, and that was one, that he loved football since he'd played for Colorado and Wichita. And that year, January 1945, the University of Tulsa played in the Orange Bowl, and I'm trying to remember who they beat, some major school, which I still have, I can find, but it's not on top of mind now. But he was so thrilled by Tulsa winning the Orange Bowl that was just a couple hours drive from Wellington. So he said, well, I better go to Tulsa. And secondly, he still wanted to kind of be near home, which was Wellington, where all of his family lived, as far as sisters and brothers and his mother and father. And Again, it was only a couple-hour drive from Tulsa to Wellington, which is 30 miles south of Wichita. And so he picked Tulsa. And he could have had Denver, Colorado, offer any place in the United States. But one thing we're blessed with was that the oil business was just being released. Most of the oil that was produced during World War II most of all of it went to the military. When the war was over, they allowed the people to go out, and the people who drilled oil during that time, the Laughlin brothers, the Williams brothers. The biggest problem was they didn't have a fast mode of transportation to get someplace quickly because the oil was spread everywhere folks they wanted to. And so anyway, the famous story is my dad drove from Wellington, Kansas to Tulsa, Oklahoma on September the 1st, 1945, spent the night in his car because he didn't have any money. He did have a little bit. He borrowed $50 from his father. He stopped in Wellington on the way down, borrowed $50. My grandfather was cutting hair at 15 cents a head at that particular time. And he woke up the next morning, went to a service station, brushed his teeth and shaved and combed his hair and said, I'm going to go sell an airplane. He started walking around downtown Tulsa. And that, by the way, was Labor Day, but for some reason Tulsa didn't celebrate Labor Day on September 2nd, 1945. I have no idea why. So everybody was at work, even on Labor Day. And he said, there's got to be somebody. I wonder where they would be. And he looked around. He said, they got to be in the tallest building here because that shows they have a lot of money or something. It was the Phil Tower. So he goes over there, and he said, he must be at the top. People that had the most money would be at the top of that building. So he got on an elevator, rode to the top of the Phil Tower. And it just so happens that it was Stanley Oil and Gas, which eventually became Pan American Oil and Gas, which was here in Tulsa. Then Standard of Indiana bought them out. And then Amoco, and they're bought out by really now Exxon Mobil. But at that time it was Stanley Oil and Gas. He went in there, and they bought 13 airplanes.
On that visit?
On that visit. And actually, they had a lease. It really was a lease with an option to purchase. They were so desperate for airplanes, and that's exactly what they wanted. This was the first time they could now buy civilian airplanes, and they wanted to get their hands on the first that they could so they could beat their competition to the drilling sites. He couldn't have walked into a better deal at a better time. So they signed a deal. He went there with $50 borrowed from his dad. By the time he got his money from Beech Aircraft, it was $100,000, which was a fortune. That's a lot of money in today's world. He was 25 years old, so he thought about retiring. Thought about it deeply. He thought, I have enough money to last the rest of my life. And actually, if he put it in the bank and drawn it, he probably would have made more money than being in aviation. But he wanted to be in aviation. So he went out and started an office in hangar number 5 and started selling airplanes. And the oil companies from all over came in and bought airplane after airplane after airplane. And finally, by 1947, he'd made enough money and built a very spectacular hangar, which was hangar number 8. At Tulsa International, which was torn down last year to make room for a clear zone, the east-west runway. It's a mandatory clear zone because of what happened in Chicago and Little Rock. A plane skid off the end of the runway and hit some obstructions, so all the obstructions have to go. So they bought hangar 8 from us, and they also bought hangar number 10, which was built in 1928 when the Tulsa International Airport was built. But anyway, he did that, and it was very successful. That was really the start of Tulsair. At that time, it was called Tulsair Inc. Later on in his career, he changed the name to Tulsair Beechcraft. And I have the original document from Walter Beechcraft signing him. At the time they got the paperwork, it was December of 1945, giving the distributorship to Tulsair Inc., which was my father's company. And that was the birth. The only other aviation at that time was over at Spartan Aviation.
Bill Skelly owned Spartan.
Skelly sold that to the gentleman that...
J. Paul Getty.
J. Paul Getty, that's exactly correct.
And then J. Paul Getty operated Spartan.
Really, to be honest with you, Skelly was mainly flight training. They weren't really selling aircraft, as I remember. They had a few things that they tried to sell, but they really weren't into airplane sales like Beechcraft was and like Cessna was. So far as the first really true aviation there for aircraft sales, maintenance, parts, storage, fuel sales, was my dad's company, Tulsair Inc., as it was then.
And then Getty kept the plant running at full capacity and subcontracts with major aircraft firms And through most of 1945, Spartan workers turned out wings, bomb bay doors, fuselages, and other parts for companies like Grumman, Curtiss-Wright, Lockheed, Boeing, and Martin. Well, can you imagine the phone call, I suspect, or however your dad told Walter Beech, hey, I just sold 13 airplanes?
It must have been incredible.
And give Walter Beech credit because he walks down in the plant and sees this man with a personality, a salesman's personality, and he was able to spot that. So let's get back to you then in your growing up years. How about the first house you remember? Where was that?
My first house was in March of 1945. Might have been renting it for all I know. It had a big old charcoal boiler in the center of it. I can remember my dad opened it up and throwing that charcoal in there, and that was the only heat we had in the house.
And where was that?
That was in Wichita, and he was working there on the line in March of 45. He was given that position in June of 45. So to go down and start meeting people in Tulsa and getting around, and he left my mother and my sister at that time with his parents, my grandmother and grandfather, in Wellington. And I spent the summer of 1945. And then I found out we were going to move then to Tulsa, Oklahoma. And so I remember driving down there with my grandfather, first time arriving in Tulsa.
And you're 4 years old about that time then, 1945.
Well, in June I was 5.
Okay.
My grandfather used to like to tease me, and he'd always say, Tommy, we're lost. I don't know how to get home. And I'd start crying. Oh, gosh, I couldn't stand the thought I'd never see my home again or my parents or anything like that. I remember when we got into Tulsa, he started teasing me about being lost. But anyway, my dad bought a really nice home down there. It was $12,000.
Here in Tulsa?
Here in Tulsa, 29th place, just to the west of Peoria, on 29th place. A really nice home. It seemed like a mansion to us.
For $12,000?
He bought this brick home, which is a 2-story brick home, on 29th place. So we pull in there, and the first thing I want to do is go out in the neighborhood and see if there's any kids. And so they released me. And you wouldn't do that nowadays, but so I run over to this other house because I heard they said they had a son over there, and he was my age. His name was Bundy Hammond, and I've known him all my life and still are good friends with him. I went to Lee School, to kindergarten, starting in September of 45.
Lee Elementary is your first school.
I spent all 7 years, kindergarten, and 6 years at Lee School, named after General Lee. So the 7th grade, I went to Horseman, which was quite an experience.
Why do you say that?
Well, they had this deal where if you were in the 7th grade, like we were, that when you got there, the boys in 8th grade and 9th grade, they would come along and pull your pants down.
Yep.
Boys will be boys, I
Yep.
guess. And I didn't like that. So I said, I'm not going to ride the bus anymore. I'm going to start walking. And it was quite a long walk from Horseman to 29th place. It really was. But I said, I'm not going to let that happen to me. They did that the first couple of days I was on the bus, so I didn't do it anymore. But anyway, it was quite interesting. A lot of my good friends there, and I met other friends that were friends of mine the rest of my life. And then at that particular time, my father had done so well, he sold the home there, and we moved to Boldwood Acres, 45th place, which is just to the west of Lewis. And then in 1955, I started the 8th grade in a new high school at Edison High School.
And then that's where you graduated from Edison.
I graduated.
During those years, and your father in aviation and the airline business, were you interested in planes and flying?
Absolutely. They had this jet they brought over from France in like 48, 49. It was a twin-engine jet airplane that Beechcraft was thinking about selling. And as a young child, I got to go up in a jet and fly around that in the late 40s, which was incredible. Beech decided not to buy it. My dad was flying all the time. He bought trainers and he'd sell those, in addition to the first airplane came out with the V-tail Bonanza in 1947. And it was like unbelievable to have an airplane with a V-tail on it. From 45 to 47, he was mainly selling twin Beech aircraft. And that's who the oil company was buying from. I'm jumping around here in a little bit. From 45 to 47, selling twin Beeches, which was used in World War II to haul 4, 5, 7, 8 people, the higher-ranking people, to fly someplace. It had 2 engines on it. The tail was down. Didn't have a nose gear on it. And the Army used them during World War II, Army Air Force. Then they made a commercial version of it. It was pretty much the same, but they just made it look pretty and nice inside. And so he sold a lot of those to the oil company. 1947, the Bonanza came out. That was an extremely popular airplane. That was a plane that you could buy for $7,000 and went 180 miles an hour. My dad sold a lot of those aircraft. And then the Twin Bonanza came out in 1950.
Since he was a pilot, was he flying these planes as he sold them?
Yes.
So what a combination of being a salesman, a pilot, and loving planes. So then did you as a family, did you fly to destinations?
Well, that's funny. The plane was called a Howard. It was made during World War II, and it had double wings on it. It was a staggered wing Beech because one of the wings was forward of the second wing. We sold one in Buffalo, New York. So we flew that airplane up there, and I was, 9 years old or 10 years old. We landed, sold the airplane, and then we rode a train down to Washington, D.C., and he took me to the Capitol and went by the White House and all the monuments that you see. And I remember as a young man, I was highly impressed. One of our cousins was there, and he was a captain in the Navy, and he took us around also. And so that was a memory I will not forget. Every place we went until I was old enough to fly myself, we'd fly in the airplane. We'd fly to Colorado some and go fishing in Colorado. Certainly in business deals, he wouldn't take me because I was a kid. But as far as family vacations, he always had a demonstrator available. We would fly to see family in Wellington, fly over to Enid to see family. We'd go down to Dallas quite a bit, and so I grew up doing that. And most of the times, he'd put me on his lap and let me fly until I finally got old enough to start getting my license, which was in 1957 when I was 16.
So did you get your license at 16?
I soloed, but you couldn't get your private license until you were 17. I got it when I was 17, and I flew continuously through high school. You know, I'd get my buddies, and we'd fly someplace. And when I was in college, I could also use the airplane. I was a Phi Gamma Delta, and I'd get all my Phi Gamma friends in my Bonanza. We'd fly down to Shreveport and have a big party with rushies and trying to get them. So I flew all my life. And when I went to OU, they had other upgrades like getting a commercial rating, instructor rating, an instrument rating. I received all those ratings at the University of Oklahoma using their airplanes.
Well, I suppose everybody wanted to be the friend of Tom Clark.
I had a lot of friends. I don't know why, but I'll say I had a lot of friends. I had a great time. I'll tell you what, the most interesting thing that you got to think about this is that I was always very independent. And my dad was always gone a lot doing business. So I wanted to kind of be on my own. So when I was 14 years old, my uncle has a small defense plant up there where they make parts for defense and everything from the airplanes. And I didn't even think much about it. I've been throwing newspapers since 11. I had about $60, $70. I went out and rode a bus by myself. Now I'm 14 years old, Wellington, Kansas up there, and get off and go out and want to buy me a car. You could drive in Kansas at 14. So I bought a Model A Ford. And I found a shack over a garage. I got the job in the defense plant in Wichita, working up there. I was making $1 nickel an hour. I was 14 years old, and I had a car, my own apartment, and I had money, which is $1 nickel an hour, 40-hour week. I was having the time of my life. That was just during the summer. School starts, I come back to Tulsa. 15, I go back up there, and I bought a 47 Ford, same scenario. Then when I was 16, my dad gave me a job in Tulsa because I could now drive there, and I was delivered parts for Tulsair. Also, he had me painting the hangars out there. I'd go out and paint the hangars and so on. He gave me $1.25, I think.
Who were you delivering parts to?
For example, there was an expert on avionics. He had special testing equipment. They'd want me to deliver the avionics over to him. He'd fix them, and when they're done, I'd go back and get them. And if they needed particular tires from a tire distributor, I'd go get the tires from them, stuff like that. I never forget that first summer. I was over there and I was walking out. I happened to drop one of the avionics part, and I picked it back out and went in. And I told this guy that I dropped it, and I afraid it might be broken, so he should look at it. And he said, "That's amazing. Most young men like you would cover that up." And he said, "I'm going to call Gale Clark and tell him what happened." He said, "You won't get any trouble. I'm going to take care of you," because he didn't realize that was my dad. But I didn't have the heart to tell him, so he calls over there, and he said, "Don't fire this kid. He was honest." And he said, "Well, that's my son, so I assure you I'm not going to fire him, but I'm glad he did that." I just ran airforms when I was 16. When I was 17, I started flying to get towards my license, which you had to be 17. And I got that on my birthday, June 6, 59.
As a young pilot at 17, did you ever have any harrowing experiences?
That's a really good question. I really was a good pilot, and I say it humbly as I can. I was really an excellent pilot, and I don't remember ever being scared or worried. Or I always felt I was confident. I knew what I was doing. I was in control. And you can tell from my experience going up 14 years old, living by myself, working, that I was very independent. I hang around guys up there that were 18, 19, 20, and we'd go to a bar and have a drink, and I felt like I was a grown-up. I really wasn't, but I learned a lot from dealing with people and talking to people. And, of course, when I got to OU, then I majored in BBA, Bachelor of Business Administration, and learned all the accounting and finance and sales and all that sort of stuff.
Because you were intending then to be in your father's business?
From day one.
From early on, as a child?
Exactly right.
You knew you were going to fly, you wanted to be in the business, and you wanted to sell airplanes.
And make money.
Right.
I came attached to making money when I was young like that. It really allowed me to do things I like to do. That sounds greedy, doesn't it? I don't know.
Well, no. Don't people work to make money, and that's what
a lot
about.
of people do, but at 14 it sounds a little weird, doesn't it?
But you had the thrill of being in an industry that you enjoyed anyway.
I just loved it.
So it just made sense that you would want to continue and then make money doing that. At OU, your experience there, at the time, football was big, and Bud Wilkinson and all that.
Yes, it was. And then Bud went out. I'm trying to remember when it was. I think he ran for Senate in 63, if I'm correct. He quit, but Harris beat him, remember?
Yes.
So he quit, and they let his assistant come in and coach, and he was terrible. I forget his name. No, it didn't work out too well. Anyway, so I went to all the OU games out of Phi Gamma Delta. That was a wonderful experience for me, and I went to ROTC. Came out as second lieutenant in the Air Force in May of 1963. They didn't have a slot for me until October of 63. So the last summer at home, I did the things I've always done, chase girls and go around my car and drink with my buddies. I mean, that's just kind of what we did. But in October, I reported to Phoenix, Arizona, to the Air Force Base there, Williams Air Force Base. I went through pilot training there. 6 months in the T-37 and 6 months in the supersonic T-38. Incredible experience. The T-37 was a two-engine training, but I flew that very well. I mean, it was almost like flying a Bonanza or something. The 38 was a different animal. They could hit 40,000 feet in 2 minutes with the afterburner. It'd go Mach 1, 1.3.
This, we should say, 63 was while Vietnam was on.
Vietnam was just getting started. The first American was killed December 22nd, 1962, and it was just starting. So after 64, we were supplying guns and equipment, and we weren't supposed to be fighting, but we were. They kept briefing us there at Williams as to what's going on. I said, I wonder if this is going to be a full-blown war. So at the end of 1 year, I wanted to be a fighter pilot. Because that's my dream. I mean, that's the ultimate. A fighter pilot in the Air Force was everything. Air Training Command, which I've gone through as a pilot, controlled where you went. And they said, we're not going to let you do that. You're so good. We're going to keep you in Air Training Command. I had no control of it. They were putting a new base in at Del Rio, Texas. So at the end of 1 year, in December of 64, when I got my wings, I was then assigned to Del Rio, Texas, which is on the border, to be a T-38 flight instructor. And that was really a big deal because very seldom did they take a brand new guy like me and put him in a T-38.
And you would have been how old?
23.
So you were the youngest, or of the youngest, to be a flight instructor there then.
Yeah, they only picked so many. I got that, and I really wanted to go fly a F-105 or a Phantom 4 supersonic fighter just because I grew up that way. That was 1 year of that, then 4 years commitment thereafter. We did acrobatics. We did instrument flying, cross-country flying. We also did just basic formation flying, all sorts of different type of flying, and it was just wonderful to do. And then during April of 65, they started the war. Bang, next thing we knew, they wanted more fighter pilots. I was frozen where I was. They said, you can't go. We need you here. I wanted to go fight. So they said, all right, we're going to really start training combat maneuvers. And they only chose about 4 or 5 of us out of the entire squadron and said, you guys are so good, we're going to have you teach military combat maneuvers and stuff. We would take the best students, train them up, or we call it rat racing, going flying around and chasing each other and trying to escape an evasion. So he gets on my tail and I get on his tail. There were no guns or bullets, but if you get behind a guy, then you won. So I did that the last 2 years of my career there. But on the weekends, they were afraid that pilots like me weren't getting enough stick time, that the students were doing all the flying. So they said, if you want to, you can take a T-38 on Friday and you bring it back on Sunday. Go any place you went to in the United States. But most guys, they just would maybe do one. I said, this is a dream come true for me. So except for Christmas, I'd go home. I'd check out a plane, that T-38, every weekend, and I went and explored America. I don't know if you remember the 60s, but unbelievable. America was coming alive. It was a different culture. The kids are different. And you remember all the stuff that was happening in the 60s. So I'd fly into an Air Force base, go in the officers club, meet people and talk to people, and I went everywhere, and it was quite an experience for me.
Were you by yourself when you did that?
I would usually take a buddy of mine, if I could find one. Sometimes I'd go by myself, but most of the time I'd find another friend that wanted to go, and so we'd do that.
Name some places.
Golly. I went to Jackson Naval Air Station down there, which was wonderful. New Orleans, 2 fighter bases out in California. Naval bases, had a naval base there in San Diego. Chicago, we'd fly into there. Flying to Denver. They had a National Guard base there. We'd fly into that. Down to Miami, obviously. One of my favorite places down in the Panhandle there, Elgin Air Force Base, where they planned the attack on Tokyo in April of 42. We loved going down that Panhandle. It was so nice down there, and Destin and so on.
What an experience.
I went to Vegas 27 times.
Wow.
When it was really coming up and things were going on there.
You're 23, 4, 5?
23, 24, 25, 26. So I got out in 68, so I was 27 when I got out. I grew up fast.
Yeah.
But I started when I was 14.
Your father must have been proud of the fact that you were a good pilot and you really took to this naturally.
Oh, yeah, extremely, yeah.
So you ended up doing a whole lot more flying than he ever did.
Oh, yes. I now have about 28,000 hours of flying. He probably stopped when he was maybe 4,000 or 5,000, I'd guess. I don't know.
Back to Walter Beech.
Well, Walter Beech died in 49, and I have pictures of him and my dad. My dad took me up there and introduced me to him, and I was very young. Most of it just from what my dad told me about. Walter Beech was very smart, very powerful, good man, did wonderful things for Beech Aircraft. His daughter, Susan, married a fraternity brother of mine. They sent me a book last year saying, we remember you and all that you did. They're younger than I am, but he'd bring their daughters down, and I'd play with them, you know. We still have a relationship. I see them every once in a while. And then his wife, Olive Ann Beech, I became very good friends with her, met many times with her. She died 7, 8 years ago.
Why do you think Beech became so successful?
They had a cousin, maybe it's a nephew, who took over. He led that company from when Walter died. Mrs. Beech owned it, but he ran the company until he retired in 81. They sold that company to Raytheon. And I think that we had great leaders. I don't know if you know it or not, but you can read the paper, Beechcraft's about to go bankrupt. So it's the leadership that makes you successful. If you have the wrong leader, you can't make a mountain out of a molehill or vice versa. You got to have the right people.
So at the same time, was Cessna a competition at that time?
Yes.
So were they the 2 main brands, probably?
Well, the other one was Piper Aircraft. Yeah, I think Bill Piper. Those are the 3, Piper, Cessna, and Beech.
We talk about Clyde Cessna. He was actually an automobile dealer in Enid, had built an airplane from plans, and so doing began to form his own ideas as to how airplanes should be designed. And he couldn't get any Enid investors in air manufacturing, so he returned to his native Kansas to found the company that would be the majority of aircraft flown in the Western world. So here it is, Kansas has a Walter Beech and a Clyde Cessna. Was Clyde quite a bit older? He would have been older than Walter, wouldn't he?
Yes.
Yeah, and that company was actually in existence probably before Walter started his business.
I don't know the fact, but it wouldn't surprise me.
But regardless, they then became competitors along with Piper.
Right.
So were Cessna planes also being sold here in Tulsa? Did they have a representative here?
They finally moved somebody down here. They didn't make it. And then they had somebody else come and try it, and they didn't make it. But there's a guy right now down at Riverside that sells the small Cessnas, Bill Christensen.
He's a Cessna dealer.
Cessna dealer for the smaller planes, not for the jets or the jet props or anything like that.
Bill Christensen, at the present time, is the city councilor for Tulsa.
Exactly. And a good friend of mine.
Were there features about Beech that were better than Cessna back then and back and forth?
I'm prejudiced as I can be, and so we think that I believe in my heart that the Beech was a superior product. But on the other end, I think the Cessnas were less expensive. So I think the people bought that. They bought what they could afford. So they were good airplanes. I'm not trying to run down the Cessna, but
right.
The Bonanza was something like from outer space. I mean, it was unbelievable.
So the Bonanza, we're talking back in the 40s?
Mm-hmm.
What would that be selling for?
Today?
No, back then.
Oh, $7,000.
That was big money, wasn't it, back then?
You run it out, time value of money, you'd be surprised what it's worth today.
And then a Cessna would have come in underneath that kind of dollar. You could have bought a Cessna for a few thousand less.
They were probably like $2,000 or $3,000 or $4,000, I guess. I mean, it's a long time ago. We weren't buying them, but that makes sense to me. They had fixed gear, so the Bonanza had a retractable gear. And they had a fixed pitch prop, which kept it at the same RPM. Where the Bonanza, you could vary the RPM, rounds per minute, in the Bonanza. Much faster airplanes. It was like a rocket from outer space or something.
To use a car analogy, a Beech was like a Cadillac,
right,
and maybe a Cessna was like a Ford or a Chevy.
Exactly.
And then the Piper, where did that come in?
Well, I'd say Piper and Cessna pretty much competed with each other.
Okay. Beech was known as top of the line and the finest from the get-go.
At that particular time.
Okay, so I have you in the Air Force. You're a flight instructor. And then you finish your duty in 1968.
Yeah, I finished in December of 68.
Are you married along that way in here?
Yeah, I married a lady when I was a junior in college. We were married for 21 years, and then we got divorced. I had a son who died from Duchenne's muscular dystrophy.
How old was he?
He was 24 when he died.
And what was his name?
Thomas Gale Clark III, but we called him Gale after my father.
Was that a disease that he was born with?
No, yes. It's the Jerry-Lewis disease. They can't find a cure for it because it's genetic. If for some reason it's transferred only from women, from mothers. If a woman has it and has a daughter, then she's a carrier of it. But if she has a son, it just deteriorates all your muscles, everything, until the last thing it gets is your heart, which is the muscle, and your lungs, which is the muscle. It used to, when we realized he had it, that he'll be dead at 9 or 10, but we spent zillions of dollars and made him live until he was 24. I have a daughter who is 49.
And what's her name?
Carolyn. This coming May the 11th, going to be recognized by the University of Oklahoma as an honored regent.
What did she do?
Well, the first thing she did, she married a billionaire. That was a smart thing to do.
And what was his name?
Bill Powers. Because of that, she was able to do things. She ran the Kennedy Center for 3 years. She now is on the board of directors for the Museum of the Grammys. Her bio is just unbelievable. I have her. She's 49. I have 3 grandsons. I did remarry August of 86, Hillary. We've been married for 26 years. I was divorced, and I called my sister, who lives in Enid. See, there any pretty ladies over there? I know this gorgeous lady. I went over there and picked her up in my airplane, flew to Oklahoma City, bought her dinner, and
Hillary,
yeah, and the rest was history. And we were very happily married, and been married for 26 years.
First date on a plane.
They're on an airplane. You don't take them down there in a cow. I want to tell you that.
Back to your son. When did you realize he had something wrong with him?
I was up at Grand Lake, parked my boat, had these steep stairs going up to where the cabin was. He's 4 years old, and we're walking up the steps, and he puts one foot down and then pushes himself up, and then brings the other foot up. He puts the other foot down. All of a sudden, this little 3-year-old kid comes on and he goes, shoom, zoos up. I said, there's something wrong with this kid. There's something wrong. I said, we need to go see a doctor. And so we went to see somebody that recommended, a nerve doctor or something. I forget what it was. And he said, I think he had Duchenne's muscular dystrophy. I said, what do you have to do? Some exercise, work out? What do you have to do? And he said, no. He looked at me and he said, he's going to die. He killed me. I mean, I started crying. I mean, I couldn't hardly stand it. So we took him, Harold Sturt, best friends with my father, and Harold pulled every string that we ever wanted and got him the very best that could be offered in America. One reason he lasted till he was 24 years old. That's probably one of the reasons that we divorced my first wife. Tremendous pressure on our marriage, watching him fade away into oblivion. Very painful, and it caused problems. I'll take all the blame. But anyway.
Tremendous stress.
Yeah, it really is.
And we should say Harold Stewart was a big name here in Tulsa.
Big name.
Owned KVO radio.
Right.
His money came from oil. Harold Stewart.
He married President Skelly's daughter. Bill Skelly's daughter, that's who Harold married.
Your father and Harold were good friends.
I got ready to get in Southern Hills. I was out in the Air Force. Dad said, hey, Harold's president this year. You want to be a member of Southern Hills? I said, yeah. There was no meeting, no talking to anybody. It was just done. Harold was a powerhouse. Powerhouse. Great guy. Everybody in Tulsa loved him. Great personality. Loved to party, have a good time. Loved to hunt, fish. Wonderful man.
And you were around him a fair amount?
To my dad. Harold and I were friends, but I mean mainly to my dad.
And then his son, who was adopted, John Stewart.
On the Board of Regents with me at OU.
How interesting that comes together.
We're good friends. We like each other very much. We talk about our dads all the time.
Good relationship.
Very good. I had a lot of other friends too, but Harold was probably one of his best friends.
Then you're out of the military, and then you decide it's time to go to work for the family business.
Well, they wanted to assign me at that point to Vietnam fighter, which I wanted 5 years sooner, badly. So they said, we have your assignment here and this and that, but you have one little window here you can get out. It was a 1-year tour, and so all the guys that had left my training squadron went over and fought, came back in 1 year. So I went around and talked to them. I said, what do you think? They said, Tom, don't go. Because we're not fighting to win. We're fighting with our hands tied behind us, and guys are dying for nothing. They all said, get out. Some of them at the end there, they were so worthless, and rather than dropping their bomb, they just go out over the ocean, pick them off, and come back. Because every day they flew the same route, the same altitude, at the same time, and they knew exactly what the SAMs, and we're just shooting them out of the air. And they said, we're fodder, target fodder is what they called them. And they said one day they were finally approved. They waited 4 years to bomb this bridge between Hanoi and the town there to the west of them. I can't think of it, Haiphong or something, where they brought all supplies in from China. They wanted to knock that bridge out because they had to slow down those supplies coming into Hanoi. And so finally they got permission from McNamara. So they went in there. In those days, they didn't have all the electrical equipment, so you'd break down to anti-aircraft fire and break out from the cloud, and you have about 2 seconds to spot the bridge, zero in on it, pickle the bomb, and pull up and go. So they went in there. Instead of hitting the 5th arch, they hit the 2nd. The bridge went boom, down in the water, and they lost 2 planes and lost 2 men. Fighter pilots are like, my brothers, because they depend on each other for life, flying the wing, fighting the MiGs, covering for everybody, rescue and all that sort of thing. But they were excited, even though they lost 2 comrades. They were thrilled that they accomplished the mission. The squadron commander walked in, a colonel, and read a letter from McNamara, a letter of condemnation for hitting the wrong arch. And he said, Tom, if he had been in the room, they would have killed him. Well, I heard that story. I said, well, that's not for me. If I'm going to fight, I'm going to fight to win. I'm not going to sacrifice myself for nothing.
But they destroyed the bridge.
Yeah. They accomplished it. But he wanted the center because he's afraid of casualties for the people living on the edge of the river. Anyway, I leave the Air Force December of 68. I come back. My dad says, what do you want to do? I said, I want to start at the bottom. I want to understand this place. I want to work line service. I want to understand the fuel business, and how that works. And so I put on a uniform and everything. And I'm standing there, and this T-38 goes by, and this pilot standing there, and I've been feeling the airplanes and stuff. I said, golly, last month I was flying one of those. And he just, oh, yeah, sure. Here you were sweeping floors, and last month you were telling me you're flying a supersonic T-38, and I didn't have the heart to tell him how I got there. I spent 6 months on line service, then I went to parts, spent about 9 months there. And then I wanted to get in sales. They didn't have any charter departments, so I'm going to start a charter department. So I started charter and got the plane, and went and got the plane and got the pilots and put it together. Pretty soon I'd make more money than just about anybody at the company. From the very first charter deals there ever was at Tulsa International, one of the first in the country that just came out where you could fly the charter like that, where it was legal and you had to get all these licenses and stuff like that. So I did that from 68 until 76. That's a long time. That's 8 years. But I started getting burned out. I wanted to go into sales, but my dad had these sales and you just couldn't fire them. I was really getting jittery. I said, it's time for me to move on here. So a friend of mine was making movies in Hollywood, as an actor. He came into town, he had a script. He says, Tom, can you help me raise some money? So I went out and raised $400,000 just like that. I said, I'm going to do this, but you know what? I'm going to produce this thing. I'm going to be in charge. Sounds like an egomaniac, but you can get more done when you're at the top. And so I went to Hollywood, 76, and I produced a film. Well, prior to that, in 75, I put money into a film called Macon County Line with this guy. Made a ton of money.
He was a friend of yours.
He starred in Macon County Line. He's the top actor in it.
And what's his name?
Jesse Bent III.
And how did you know him?
I grew up with him in high school. And he was in Lancer. I was in Lancer at the social club in high school.
At Edison?
At Edison. He went to Hollywood as soon as he got out of the Army. He had served 2 years in the Army.
So he comes back and he gets you involved.
In 75, 74 from Macon County Line. Max Baer Jr. produced Macon County Line. Dad was the world's champion, remember, boxing. This is Junior. Played Jethro.
Yes.
Remember the Hillbillies?
Yeah.
That's Max Baer Jr. So I go to Hollywood out there. I'm hanging out in his mansion and we're having a grand old time. So then I said, I'm going to produce my own film. I'm going to show that I can do something else besides make a charter department. My dad said, go do it. And he furnished money. Half of it I raised from other people and he furnished the other half. Now I think about it. So I go out there and I made this movie called Black Oak Conspiracy. It was a good film. I broke even. In fact, I made about $300,000 now I think about it. But what happened was he owed me lots more money. The distributor, which is a very famous guy, Roger Corman. He made all the B movies back then. He found some of the major movie stars. Roger Corman was the king of making this movie, and so he bought my film. He gave me $300,000, but there was another $300,000 coming on top of that, and he wouldn't pay it to me. He gave the book, said, I've never been sued. I've been honest. That's a lie. I sued him. But the time you hire the attorneys, the time you do the auditing of the books, I got it all back. But by the time I spent them, I broke even. So I said, you know what? I worked my tail off. I broke even. I had a wonderful time. It took 2 years to make and get it going. And it was a theatrical release all over the United States, all around the world. I saw it everywhere. I thought that this is not the business for me. So I'm going back to Tulsa. So I come back to Tulsa. But at that time, a guy named Frank Larry, salesman, he wanted to go on his own. He quit. Dad said, there's your chance. Go sell airplanes. I broke every record. I got trophies everywhere. I sold 78, 79, 80, 81, 82. 4 years and just made a ton of money. In 1982, my father, I think, was starting to fade. He said, Tom, I'm thinking about selling. Finally, by 1985, I said, let me tell you something. Either I buy majority control of this company or I'm going. So my sisters, we worked out a deal where my dad had enough money to live on. I got majority control of Tulsair in 1985. That continued until 1992 when I bought my sisters out, and everybody out now owned it 100%. We made a lot of money from the King Air when it came out. They called it the King Air 200, 1974 up to 1982. Very popular airplane. We made about $10 million. And I said, Dad, you get my sisters. You all divide the money up like you want. You take every dime of it. All I want is Tulsair and their assets here. And by the way, I don't know if you remember this, in 82, remember we had the crash in 81, 82, 83, 84, 85, 86 were lean years. I bought it at the bottom. He said, you'll lose your ass, word for word. And I said, well, that's mine to lose. Take your money and be happy. So I took it. And by 1987, I turned around. I was back in the black. I was making money. My poor sister, one of them, gave it to her husband. He bought that oil refinery down in Duncan, Halliburton's, which they abandoned. Paid $2.5 million for it, or $3 million. I forget what they paid. And I thought, are you out of your mind? This thing is worthless. What are you doing? Don't come moaning to me if it doesn't work. And my sister, now her husband's a very smart guy in real estate, has a company over there, but she gave it to him. They went out in the country, and we're going to develop all this land for developing Enid. And, of course, Enid crashed, too. And he lost every dime of it. And so they've always bugged me. You're living like King Farouk, Tom, and we have nothing, you know. And I said, you had it all. If you'd given it to me, I could have put in a Cub Scout savings account, and you still have it, and you'd be making money on it. Why didn't you come talk to me? I was being funny, but finally we've kind of gotten over that after all the years, so we're back to being friendly. But they were bitter at me. Somehow, because I'd made the money and they were broke, they couldn't understand it. But I said, simple economics. You gave your money to your husbands, they wasted it. I used mine as I knew how to do it in the business I know very well.
Your sisters, were they older or younger than you?
Both younger.
And so today in 2012, all families are
And Enid was easy to come back. I think her husband finally said, hey, don't blame Tom, and so we get along fine. And for the first time in however long it was, finally my sister called me the other day and said she wants to get with me.
That recent?
Yeah, within the last 4 or 5 months.
That had to make
I had not talked to her from 85 until just a couple of weeks ago.
In 2012?
Yeah.
Well, that had to make you feel good.
Yeah, because they took that money. I mean, they were really in better shape than I was. I took a hell of a risk. And they were blaming me for being successful.
You've taken the phone call and haven't gotten together personally yet, but will?
I shall.
Because they have children, too, nieces and nephews, I suppose,
right.
that you've never met.
Well, I haven't seen them in a long time. I probably won't recognize them.
But that's a great story. In the movie, Black Oak Conspiracy, who starred in that?
Jesse Vent, he also was the leader in Macon County Line. Karen Carlson, gosh, she was Miss Arkansas. She was runner-up number 2 in Miss America. In fact, when we were doing the post-production on the film, she let me live in the house with her. Jesse Vent was living with her at that time. They got together on the set, and so they let me stay there as we were doing post-production. We had really a good cast and a well-written story. Max helped us a little bit, Max Berry Jr., and gave us some advice on how to do things and supported us. He didn't make any money, but just for the fun of it,
Were you involved in watching the actual making of the movie?
Yeah.
Did you enjoy that process?
Oh, unbelievable. Outside of Sacramento, there's a little town. I can't think of the name of it now, but it's beautiful. They found gold, that river up there. Well, they put a dam up and formed a lake. It was beautiful. The scenery was beautiful. And, of course, I didn't never made a film, but I learned fast. So I was involved, and then pretty soon I had to really just take some of it over. Not maybe as far as directing, but as far as the story style and making things happen and showing up and everybody doing everything. I mean, I ran the show because I could do it. I did a little cameo in it.
Oh, really?
And just for the fun of it.
Are there copies out there today of Black Oak?
If you want one, I'll give you a CD to it.
What did you do in it?
My friend Jesse Vent got in a fight with a guy who was bothering his girlfriend or something, and I got a hat on from a little hamburger place. They're fighting out there, and I run out. I get him, and I shoot him. Hey, stop it, Ricky. You guys quit fighting there. What are you doing? Yeah, you can't do this at my place. And I look down, and I see the guy's name in the movie was Jingo. He was from this town. I said, hey, Jingo, good seeing you. How long you been here? He said, about 5 minutes. Cut to the next scene.
It wasn't thrown away on the cutting room floor. It made it into the...
Well, if they wanted their paycheck.
Right.
They wanted me to buy all the stuff I did.
So how did that do box office-wise?
Like I said, now that I get my money back, I made $200,000, then I had to sue Roger Corman. Yeah. Look up Roger Corman. He's quite a guy. Quite a buy on him now. By the time I got through suing him, I broke even. I said, that's enough. If I can't trust people to keep from cheating me, and that's still the major problem in Hollywood.
Did you look back thinking you'd want to do anything more in Hollywood, even after you made money?
If somebody would come up and give me $500 million or something, I don't know, and I didn't even they do, I'd love to go make another movie. I mean, I know where all those people are, and I'd love to. It was fun. I enjoyed it. It was creative, and I met great people and famous people. And not that I care about the fame, but when I was hanging out with them, because Jesse Vent and them and all that, they were like buddies. They weren't like, you're a Hollywood guy, I'm thrilled to give me an autograph. I got to know some of the top actors.
But it still fascinates you. And if somebody said today, you'd even get involved in something in Hollywood today.
Well, I might get involved. The big thing I got going for right now, I have a grandson. He's a senior at OU. He's taking all the flying lessons and getting a business degree. My goal is, before I turn into a vegetable someday, is to try to teach him this business. I'd like to see the business carry on. I told my daughter, I said, look, I will give the company to my grandson or your son if you'll pay the death tax. And we're going to try to mitigate that minimum. So it's an emotional thing for us, Tulsair. But I could probably do both.
Your grandson, his name is?
Tom Cleater.
Is he interested in the business? Have you talked to him about it?
Yes, I have. And he's taken all the flying lessons, getting this business degree. And
doing the same thing you did.
I think, yeah, I've set the mold, and he seems like he's there. And he's a handsome-looking guy, and I just love him to death.
Is the competition today in 2012 a lot stronger than it was back 70s, 80s?
Sure, because there's way more manufacturers. I mean, look at this deal we got with Brazil. If you sell an American-made airplane in Brazil, there's a 29% tax to bring to the country. They're bringing these airplanes up here, making them with cheap labor, dumping them in America. They're called phenoms, and it's just killing us. In fact, Hawker Beechcraft was supposed to get the military award for their plane. It's a jet prop airplane for close air combat. They thought they had it for sure, and they gave it to the Brazilian company. Now they're suing, and they may be able to turn that around. But my point is, we're full of people who don't have jobs. What in the world are we bringing planes up from Brazil for? I mean, it's crazy. So what's happened is they come in here and they got these airplanes, the Phenom 100, 300, 600. I'm just using an example. Dump them up here, and it makes it really tough to compete. You read the paper in the last couple of days, you'll see Hawker Beechcraft is close to going bankrupt. Cessna, the first quarter of this year, had about a $300 million loss. Piper's not doing too much anymore. I'm worried about America. At some point, America's got to get back to work. I'll tell you what I'm doing. It looks to me like it's all moving overseas, and so I'm going to Farnborough, which is a huge oil deal. I'm the state of Oklahoma. We're going to have a deal over there for products that we sell, which are aircraft parts and airplanes and stuff like that. I'm sending a guy to eBase, which is in Geneva, in May. I've got deals with Bombardier and so on for selling those products overseas. I'll still do all I can for America and sell planes here. Sure do better, but if something doesn't change, I see a limited future for me, my company, and possibly for the whole United States. You just can't be shoving people out there drawing paychecks and not finding them jobs and doing things like that, and I'm concerned.
Where are the Beechcrafts made?
Wichita.
So it's really tough to compete then, price-wise, against these planes that are made overseas.
Well, you're dealing with a guy that works for $1.50 an hour, and I'm not anti-union or anything like that, but with the deal for retirement and dollars that you get in this and that and so on, it's an unfair balance. And you saw the thing with American Airlines. You saw what finally happened to them. I hate it, but we're competing on a global scale, and you got to learn how to compete on that. We can only borrow so much money someday, and of course you see what's happening in inflation. The more you borrow, the dollar is going down and down, so things are getting more and more expensive. I'm mortified, almost terrified as to the long-term future if something doesn't change. Mm-hmm. And that's not politics to me. That's just dollars in and dollars out.
Let me clarify. You said Beechcraft was going out of business?
Well, they're close to bankruptcy.
Beechcraft?
Beechcraft. You got a paper from yesterday or day before? I don't know.
Okay, so if Beechcraft is going out of business, where does that leave?
They haven't done it yet, but they're close.
Where does that leave your company?
That's a really good question. One, the only profitable thing right now is parts. We sell an awful lot of parts. We can work on parts, but they may go to the bankruptcy court, and he may say, well, we don't need you anymore to sell parts. We'll get somebody else to do that. Bankruptcy judge has unlimited power, as you probably well know. So it scares the hell out of me. Hawker Beechcraft right now, Hawker is the one they bought from British Aerospace 15 years ago, and the Beech airplanes, they are owned by Goldman Sachs, one of the wealthiest companies, and Onyx, which is a similar type company in Canada, and some investors there in New York City who also added money. But Goldman Sachs is the main leader on the thing. They built a plane to compete with the Bombardier airplane. The Bombardier airplane, the main selling one right now is Challenger 300, although they have 5 or 6 airplanes doing very well. They built an airplane to compete against it called the Hawker Beechcraft 4000, and they didn't build it right. It killed them. Back in the early 90s, they built a plane called the Starship. I told them it would never work. I told them why. I explained it to them. The performance for what it cost would never work. They still went in and produced it. They lost $1 billion on it. And in 1991, 92, it was the highest loss any company's ever had in America. The Hawker airplane is a great airplane, but the way the British made it, you have a lot of calendar timelines you have to meet with it. It makes it very expensive to operate, and so they're not as popular they used to be, and they keep dropping in value and dropping in value. So if it drops in value, it hurts them dollar-wise. The King Air 200 and King Air 90 are doing well, but that's not where the money is.
And the money is where?
In the bigger jets.
If Beechcraft is out of business and that you can't sell...
They're not out. They're looking at it.
You're very nervous at this point about that happening.
Very.
What if that brand goes away?
Well, if that goes away, hopefully the parts will be left, which we're number one in. Or we're selling Bombardier airplanes. They're made in Canada, Montreal.
So you're selling those now, and that's a big source of your income at the moment.
It is. And then we have fuel sales, and we have maintenance.
Your Phillips 66 Performance Center?
Yes, that's a fancy name. That means we sell Phillips 66 fuel. They call it Performance Center, but that's just hype.
Are you in Tennessee also, Millington Municipal Airport?
Yeah, we had a heck of a deal. It killed us. The Navy decided to shut down their training base down there in 1995. It's a training base for years and years and years and years. And I cannot believe this, but a representative, talked the Navy into moving headquarters personnel, Navy, to Millington, Tennessee. Every Navy personnel has to meet a purser board in there twice a year, where they go in and go over their career in the Navy and where they're going, so they have to meet twice a year. And why they moved it, I don't know how you ever did it from Washington, D.C., but that's where headquarters Navy personnel is, right there in Millington, Tennessee. So I got to thinking about it, and I said, you know what? If they have to meet a board twice a year, all these pilots are going to fly in here, land at the old Millington Airport, which they gave to the city of Millington, and then they're going to go across the road and meet their boards, and then come back and jump in their jet. They'll call it a training flight, but it'll really be for them to check their records, and they get some training, and off they'll go. So I went around and leased all the property there at Millington Airport. Sure enough, these pilots started just pouring in there. And I'm making really good money. And I have a monopoly, so now I can charge what I want to because I leased everything up. It went along just fine until the war got hot in Afghanistan. Planes go over there. Now they're not coming in. I keep thinking Afghanistan's about over with. I'm losing money down there now, but if they'll come back, that process will start again. They'll come back and fly in there and meet their boards and buy fuel from us. We have a maintenance facility there. And it's okay, but that's not where the money is.
It's in the fuel.
Yeah. Why did Dillinger rob banks? Because that's where the money is.
Right.
So that's still good. I'm trying to subsidize that until I think they're going to shut this thing down in the next 6 months.
Shut what down?
Afghanistan. I think they'll bring the troops home and say, good luck.
Americans kind of feel that should be happening anyway. So,
first of all, we don't have the money to fight it. And secondly, nobody's whipped them yet. The Russians didn't whip them. It's an endless deal. I mean, Bush went on there and bombed them with B-52s, and they fled to Pakistan. What made him think they wouldn't come right back? It's exactly what they did. And what they should have done is kept those 52 there, and every time they come back, just bomb them back into Pakistan. Nobody would gotten killed. Pretty soon they would say, hell with it, we'll stay in Pakistan. But when you start fighting a ground war with American soldiers, they have endless supply, they know the same values we do, insanity. But you know what? Nobody asked me. If they used the same process they used in the beginning, it would have worked. But they went to the same ground war that we got in Vietnam. We ended that war in 1972. We lost, close to 80,000 men or something like that. They ended that war in 3 weeks by going to Hanoi and just finally dropping bombs on them. They said, enough of that. But you can't fight these guys on the ground. It's horrible. You waste all the money, all the good Americans die. You can't win.
Your school, Oklahoma University, you were very good to it, and today you are a member of the Board of Regents.
I am.
That's got to make you feel good that you've
I'm
been able.
very, very proud of that, one, and two, anything I wouldn't do to try to make that school a better place. And I do all that I can.
Here we are in 2012. How many years have you been a regent?
11. I have 3 to go. I may get a historic third term. We'll see. I'll be the first person to go for a third term if I get it, and I'm working it already.
Just for historical sake here, you've been there for 11. President David Boren has been there. You've been able to see him work wonders on the campus, raising funds and all that kind of thing. You've been eyewitness to all of that. Comment on that.
I've been part of it. And not just me. I have 6 fellow regents. So
I realize.
I'm not taking all the glory or anything like that.
No, it's just the fact that you were there to witness it.
It was more than witness. As you know, a board has the final power. We could fire Boren, 4 of us, in an open meeting act within 24 hours. That's a lot of power. We're all smart enough to know what his good points are and what he can accomplish, which he has. There's all the glory he can get for that. We know his bad points, things that should be better here and better there, and we told him, and sometimes he listens and sometimes he doesn't. There's a lot of people in Oklahoma here right now who would like his head on a platter. I won't say who they are or why or what. But he needs to go in a blaze of glory at the right time. And the right time is approaching for him, his family, for OU.
He's been president how long now?
He came in the end of 92. So how long is that? He came in November of 92.
It's coming up on 20 years.
He'll be Cross.
President Cross.
President Cross.
Right. What are issues facing the university today that you might just comment on? What is it you're dealing with?
There's one group of people that say, hey, you need to spend less dollars. And I say, well, I understand that, but if things are really that bad, we have 40,000 students, the maximum we've ever had, People are pouring over the border from Texas to our school. If we were to lower the price on for attending the University of Oklahoma, we couldn't handle any more students. And they're thrilled to have that. We have the highest number of merit scholars in the nation. So I think what we really need is a better accounting to the legislature and how these dollars are being spent, where they have greater input, not control, but input, and that they are talked to by people they can have faith in as to what's going on, what needs to be changed. There are some things that need to be changed, what's good about the university, what's not good, so that they can have somewhat the same faith that I do in the university. And so it's a tough position for me in that there's a lot of different ways that people see things. I've been lucky in that I gained a lot of faith, a lot of people there that are willing to talk to me. I'm talking about people who work for the University of Oklahoma in every aspect. I think I have a good feeling as to what needs to be done, but I'm just one person. There's 6 other regents that have a lot to say. Of course, David has a tremendous say. So I think some changes need to occur, but at the same time, there's got to be a lot of recognition for the good things that David Bohr and his staff have accomplished.
Yeah. As a regent, do people reach out to you to complain?
Quite a bit. Some of them are kooks, which I don't talk to too long. Some of them are people I feel like I need to talk to and help them with their problem. I'm quite active in that, and I get a lot of calls.
That is a real powerful position, isn't it? The regent of the University of Oklahoma. OSU, too, has their power, their regents as well, but we're talking about this school.
Well, from past history it has been that, but, OSU, I love the school, I like the people, the president and all that they're doing. They're coming on strong, and someday there'll be a very strong competition between those two universities. I have very, very good friends over there, and this stuff about disliking each other because of football or basketball is crazy to me. And I want to see them do well. I want the state of Oklahoma to do well. My true love is the state of Oklahoma. I'm born and raised, and everything that's happened good to me has happened here in the state. And particular pride for the University of Oklahoma. And it's the same battle we have going on right now between Oklahoma City and Tulsa. I mean, the thing is, Tulsa in the 50s was the king. We had the oil capital of the world. Oklahoma City, the big joke was then you take away the legislature and you have Enid, and that was ho, 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 ho. But for some reason, they had tremendous more foresight than we did, because what's happened is they took their city limits and they moved it out, 100 miles so they could control their destiny. Here in Tulsa, you have Jenks and Broken Arrow and Tulsa and Bixby and so on. Well, we're locked in. Obviously, to have a great city, it takes dollars. So you have West Tulsa, and you would call that a wealthy community, and North Tulsa not a wealthy community, and the Spanish are starting to come into East Tulsa, and at some point, hopefully, they'll make the dollars. And so really, you have South Tulsa, where most of the dollars are, and some of them are saying, we can't afford the taxes, and they're leaving and going to the other small towns, and Tulsa's hurting. And then we had the rules that came down where the votes had to be separated out and this and that. So Oklahoma City's not going through that right now. Because of that, they have really drawn some very, very large industries as far as oil. As you know, Boeing shut down Wichita and came to Oklahoma City. American Airlines were so bought most airplanes, they didn't come to Tulsa. They went to Oklahoma City. I could just go on and on and on. And the way they put that thing together now is incredible. They are really the powerhouse in the state of Oklahoma now. But a lot of people in Oklahoma State are very bitter about the bad days of the 50s and 60s and early 70s when Tulsa really didn't pay them much attention. It's a battle I have trying to say, hey, guys, we're not going to cut Tulsa off and let it float out to sea. We have a lot of wonderful people up there. We still have boats up there. Somehow we've got to learn to have faith and trust in each other and believe in each other and try to help. And maybe we won't be in Oklahoma City, but I think we still bring a lot to the table. There's a tremendous battle that's took place, OU Tulsa, for our hospital, community care. I tell you what, some of the regents who live in Oklahoma City, I had to fight until just last weekend to even get permission. The Oxleys are giving $30 million, and Georgia's giving $30 million, and maybe another $40 million. It's not costing them a dime, and they went through hearing after hearing after hearing, and it took every bit of my energy in politics when people had to call, and I got through by the skin of my teeth just last week. What they're afraid of is that if they put the hospital in Tulsa, it would affect the dollars flowing into the health science center down there and our cancer hospital, which is unbelievable. I mean, OU Tulsa is probably 5% of what that value is. They want to protect it, and I understand that, but I mean, it's a battle. I believe in the whole state. I'm proud of Oklahoma City, but my heart and soul is Tulsa. So I'm doing all I can. But OU's doing fine. Our economics are under control. We borrow money to the maximum we have, but still it's under control.
Just briefly then, advice maybe you give to students coming out into the world, OU students, OSU students, they're coming out in the world, maybe they choose your profession. Do you have any word for them in the business world or what have you?
I'm very proud of the students now. It's quite varied throughout the University of Oklahoma. We have a lot of different programs. You know, the 60s and 70s were wild, and you weren't for sure exactly what the young people were going to do or where they're going to end up. I think that they have really grown quite a bit. I think their parents grew up from being wild people to say, here's a better way to live, be independent, do your thing, but at the same time realize you have a responsibility to the community, to this United States, to your state, to anything that's of value to you. You need to be able to stand up for it. I think the students, when I see the things going on down there, I'm very pleased. If we had a problem, I'll tell you, I really would. We have a problem. And I'm a straightforward guy in a conversation like this. I'm very pleased with them and the values that they have. They're not exactly the same as mine, but we weren't raised at the same time. But you need to get your degree. If you're thinking about going on, a master's degree is wonderful, obviously, and the doctor, if you're going into a particular profession that requires it, that's something to consider. But a lot of people are staying over there. Some people stay in for their master's, and others go someplace else just to meet different people and see how they think and a different school and a different approach to it. But I think we're on the right track. I really do.
Did you have any mentors or heroes that you looked up to in your early years in life? Anybody that you wanted to emulate?
My father, he was the one that drove me to this thing. The thing I feel bad about, I love my mother, but I never paid much attention to her. He died way before she did. And getting to know my mother was a wonderful thing. What a good and decent person she was. And I always felt bad that I didn't show her more love and respect and kindness and feelings. I always was driven towards my father, and they had the main influence on me. And then there was the young guys I ran around with. I mean, some of them were bad guys, but some of them were good guys. Some were smart people. And they taught me a lot also in growing up and so on. I've learned to operate my way and how to make things happen, to make things work and not lose on the situation.
Were these friends out of school here or at OU? And
high school, OU, Air Force. I love meeting good people that I like and I can do things with, and they understand me and I understand them.
How old was your father when he died?
75.
Why did he die?
He had a stroke when he was 67. He was too heavy, too fat. But the worst thing, he smoked continuously his entire life. He died of lung cancer when he was 75. Heavy smoker. Heavy smoker. I'm surprised he lasted until he was 75. And I've never smoked.
He gave you this life, didn't he? And then you took it and ran with it. You were talented enough to do that. But it goes back to him. It goes back to Walter Beach. All that, as you think about your life, how it played out.
I think life is an experience. But it depends how you use that experience. I try to learn from it. I'd set goals in it. I say, this is where I want to go. You have to sometimes jag to your right and jag to your left. What's necessary, but my thought process of where am I headed and why and how do I get there and what do I have to do to make that happen. I've had some failures too. My first marriage, I was a failure, and so I don't walk on water.
And I'm sure in your business there's been sleepless nights as the oil boom went away in Oklahoma in the 80s and so forth. You wondered what I'm going to do next.
It's not all gravy. You just go to bed at night. What am I going to do? I feel terrible. You're upset. How am I going to make this work? Some part of it may just be pure luck. A lot of it's my own skills. Maybe some of it's a blessing if you're a religious person. I don't know. And I'm not the greatest guy that's ever done this before. A lot of people have done it. You're talking about Chester today, his son Chet is booming success. Just booming.
Chester Cadjo of Quick Trip.
Yeah. There's way more successful people than I am. But I'm proud of what I've done. Very proud, and I'm sorry for the things I've failed at or hurt somebody or something like that.
And everybody has that in their background. You're not alone.
I would assume so.
Right. Well, I want to thank you for this time. You've been very giving. It's very interesting. I've known you for some time, and I didn't know all this about you, so I'm sure those who listen will find it fascinating. I appreciate it. And then, of course, the great work you're doing for OU and for Tulsa.
I'm trying.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.